My name is Jennifer, and if I am being honest, my life has always been a mixture of tradition and longing for freedom. I grew up in a family that valued rules, respect, and appearances more than anything. My father, especially, carried the weight of responsibility on his shoulders and expected us all to follow the path he laid out. For years, I tried. I studied hard, I respected his words, and I never questioned the way things were supposed to be. Until the day I realized that my heart was not mine anymore, it belonged to someone I was not supposed to love. That someone was my cousin, Daniel. Daniel had been part of my life since childhood. We grew up playing together in my grandmother's backyard, chasing each other through orchards, laughing until our stomachs hurt. He was kind, protective, and always had a way of making me feel safe. As children, we were inseparable, and as we grew older, that bond only deepened. Somewhere between laughter, secrets shared under the stars, and the comfort of being truly seen, my feelings changed. I started to notice the way my heart raced when he entered the room, the warmth that spread through me when he smiled. He seemed to feel it too, though neither of us dared to speak it aloud at first. For months we carried the weight of unspoken emotions, glances that lingered too long, silences heavy with meaning. One evening, after a family dinner, Daniel and I found ourselves walking together down the quiet lane near my house. The night air was cool, filled with the scent of jasmine. For the first time, he spoke what I had been holding in my heart. He told me he cared for me deeply, more than just as family. My chest ached with relief, because I felt the same. That night, under the dim light of the moon, we admitted to each other that we were in love. But love, in my family, was never simple. When my father discovered how close Daniel and I had become, his anger shook the walls of our home. He called it shameful, unacceptable, and something that could never happen. He told me that family ties were sacred and that marrying Daniel would dishonor everything he believed in. His voice was harsh, his words cutting, and in that moment, I felt my heart shatter. I begged him to understand. I tried to explain that this was not just a childish crush, that Daniel and I truly knew and loved each other. But my father's mind was like stone. He refused to listen, his face stern and unyielding. He told me I would never have his blessing, that I needed to forget Daniel and prepare to marry someone appropriate, someone of his choosing. The days that followed were some of the hardest of my life. My father kept a closer eye on me, limiting my time outside, questioning my every move. My mother, though gentler, supported him in silence, afraid of going against his will. The home that had once been my refuge now felt like a cage. Yet, despite the walls around me, my feelings for Daniel only grew stronger. We found ways to see each other, through chance meetings at family gatherings, through messages hidden in borrowed books, through glances across crowded rooms. Each stolen moment felt both precious and dangerous. There was a quiet desperation in our love, a fire that grew stronger the more it was forbidden. I often lay awake at night, torn between loyalty to my family and the call of my own heart. I loved my father dearly and didn't want to cause him pain. But I also knew that denying my love for Daniel would mean denying myself. The thought of living my life without him felt like suffocating slowly, day after day. Our story became a test of patience and courage. Daniel promised me that no matter what happened, he would wait, and that we would find a way, even if it took years. His words gave me strength, though the uncertainty of the future often brought me to tears. And so here I am, caught between duty and desire, love and obedience. My father's "no" echoes in my ears every day, but my heart beats with a quieter, steadier rhythm, whispering Daniel's name. I don't know how this story will end, but I do know one thing: love this true, this deep, does not simply fade away. I remember the weeks after my father's harsh refusal as if they were painted in shades of gray. The house that once felt like a sanctuary was suddenly suffocating. Every door seemed locked, every window closed, and every glance from my father a reminder that he had already decided the course of my life. I tried to bury myself in books, in studies, in chores, anything to distract myself from the emptiness that grew in my chest. But love is not something you can push away so easily, especially when it has already taken root so deeply inside you. Daniel and I were separated physically, but not emotionally. My heart was tethered to him, even when I could not see him. I found ways to feel close, holding on to the letters he secretly slipped to me, replaying in my mind the warmth of his voice, the look in his eyes when he told me he would wait. He had always been patient, steady, and calm, even when I fell into storms of despair. That was the thing about Daniel. He was not the loudest or most reckless type of love. He was the quiet fire that never went out. One day, months after that painful confrontation with my father, I managed to meet Daniel again at a cousin's birthday gathering. Families were mingling, laughter filling the air, but when I saw him standing at the edge of the crowd, it felt like the world faded away. Our eyes met, and suddenly I felt alive again. We didn't dare speak much in public, but when no one was watching, he pressed a small folded note into my hand. Later, when I read it under the safety of my blanket, my tears soaked the paper. He had written, "No matter how long it takes, I'll keep choosing you. Don't give up." That note became my anchor. Time passed, and while the restrictions in my home grew tighter, my resolve only strengthened. My father tried to introduce me to men he considered suitable, wealthy, well-educated, men from families he respected. I sat politely through conversations, nodded when spoken to, but inside my mind was screaming. I didn't want their polite compliments or carefully rehearsed smiles. I wanted Daniel, with all his flaws, his warmth, his laughter that came from the soul. I began to realize something important. Love isn't just about romance or fleeting emotions, it's about the courage to stand for what feels true, even when the world tells you no. That thought began to grow in me like a seed of defiance. For the first time, I wondered if I had the strength to fight for myself. Not just against my father's will, but for the life I wanted to live. One evening, my father brought up again the idea of arranging my marriage. He spoke about duty, reputation, and stability, but as I listened, I felt a strange calm wash over me. I realized that his words no longer held the same power they once did. My heart was already elsewhere, already committed. That night, I whispered into the dark, as if confessing to the stars, "I will not give up. Not on him, not on us." And so began the quiet rebellion of my heart. Daniel and I found more secret ways to communicate. A friend we both trusted became the messenger of our letters. In those pages, we poured out our dreams, our fears, and our plans. Sometimes he wrote about building a life far from the city, where no one could tell us how to live. Other times, he wrote about simply holding my hand in public without shame. Every word was a promise that we belonged together, even if the road ahead was uncertain. The hardest part was the loneliness. There were nights when I cried until I had no tears left, when the silence of my room felt unbearable. I wondered if love was worth all this pain. But then I would remember Daniel's steady eyes, his quiet strength, and I knew it was. Because without him, life felt empty, like a story with no meaning. Years seemed to pass in fragments of stolen hope. Then, slowly, something began to change. My father grew older, and perhaps a little softer. He still disapproved, still frowned when Daniel's name came up, but he no longer had the same iron grip over my choices. My mother, too, began to show me small signs of support, quietly slipping me words of comfort when she thought no one was listening. The turning point came the day I finally told my father that I would not marry anyone else. My voice shook, but I held my ground. I told him that this was my life, my heart, and that denying it would only bring misery. He was silent for a long time, his face unreadable. I thought he might explode with rage, but instead, he sighed deeply, as if the fight had drained out of him. He didn't say yes, not that day. But he also didn't say no. That was enough. Months later, after endless waiting, endless hoping, and endless prayers, the day came when my father finally relented. He told me he didn't understand, that he still didn't agree, but that he was tired of standing in my way. My heart leapt with joy and relief. For the first time, I felt the weight on my chest lift. When I told Daniel, his eyes filled with tears. We had dreamed of this moment for so long, and now it was finally real. Our wedding was not extravagant, but it was filled with love. As I walked down the aisle, every step felt like reclaiming a piece of my freedom. And when Daniel took my hand, I knew I was exactly where I was meant to be. Now, as I look back, I realize that the road to love is never easy, but perhaps it is not meant to be. Perhaps the struggle is what makes it real, what carves it into your soul so deeply that it cannot be erased. Daniel and I built a life together, filled with laughter, quiet moments, and the kind of love that endures storms. There are still challenges, of course. No life is perfect, but every time I see him smile, I remember the promise we made to each other in the darkest days, that we would never give up. And we didn't.